Good morning everyone and welcome back to the vlog. In today's episode, we are going to be reviewing the Weltmeister W5 or Weltmeister W5 because it has German influences. But for the sake of this video, this will be called the W5 moving forward. Full disclaimer, this car is being lent to me by WM Motors. I'm not being paid to review this car. They lent it to me because they are a family friend and I like them dearly. But from the petrol head standpoint, I really dislike this car. I don't like what it stands for. I don't like that EVs will be replacing the very thing that I love the most, engines. Now, engines make beautiful noises, pops and bangs, and really loud sounds, but this is the future. Sadly, the EU has said that in 2030, they're going to ban all in-car engine cars, basically going EV. So, knowing those facts, we are going to do a full in-depth review of this car. We are going to be taking it on a road trip, both in the city and out of town, and seeing if I'm going to get the range anxiety issue. This car has a tall order to fill in because they are claiming that it reaches 400 kilometers in a single charge. So Nick is finally in the car with us holding the camera. We're going to plot out our route on Waze and figure out how many kilometers this says versus how many kilometers the car is going to consume. Granted, it is peak hour now, it is 7 a.m. and we're gonna go through rush hour traffic to simulate in-car city driving, and then after that we're gonna go to Horseshoe Hill to visit a miniature horse to check out if we can adopt this horse because I heard Doc Dan is selling this horse. And then after that we're gonna go back again into the city and then maybe stop by one more office before dropping Nick back. So on our gauge cluster here on the left side, the car says it's 84% battery or 343 kilometers. So we're going to see if that holds true versus the mileage that we're going to log on our phone. So let's get on the road. First impression of the W5. It's actually very comfortable. I have turned on the regenerative braking because I feel like it's such a waste to throw away all this energy of the car. So what happens is there are 3 modes for the regenerative braking, which means 0 is off. When you let off the gas, the car coasts like a normal car. And then number 1 is mild regenerative braking, so you feel just a little slowdown. And then number 2, which is the mode we have it on now, is basically the strongest mode where you're going to capture as much energy as possible. I do like how it slows the car down abruptly, that I don't have to tap the brakes sometimes because it does slow the car a lot down. So we are going to be dropping by Victoria Court Malate, which is not going to be Victoria Court Malate for long because we are rebranding and changing the image of the property. Here's a fun fact for you guys. EVs will not save the planet. Why? Because EVs are also polluting in general when they're mining for their batteries. So if you guys want to know more, you can watch a video from Autotrader. I'll leave the link up here in the box somewhere. They basically described a study on how Volvo was saying that EV cars are not green and you need to run the EV cars up to about 50 to 90,000 miles before the EV cars even become greener than the gasoline powered cars. Now granted, in the Philippines, if we're going to charge our EV, we are charging it through the power station, which means we're still burning coal, we're still burning actual fossil fuels to get power. Now if you do have renewable sources in your house like solar panels or windmills or other devices like hydroelectric power, then yes, you might be greener and you can bring down the average mileage to maybe 29,000 miles. Now granted, EVs are clean in terms of when you're driving them, there's no tailpipe emissions from them, but the manufacturing process of making the batteries, shipping the raw minerals from one country to another to produce the actual lithium batteries that go into all EV cars are still very consuming in terms of fuel and manufacturing processes, which is why the study done by Volvo is saying EVs are not that green to begin with, but they will be greener over time. Welcome to Hotel Ava. We are in the Malate branch, and as you can see, these are the wall planters that we're going to be adding throughout the whole hotel. Now it stems from the inside all the way to the outside of the property. We are trying to go green also in this property by putting a lot of solar panels and capturing rainwater, which we're going to use to actually water the wall planter system. Later on also we'll be adding some grow lights, because obviously with the solar power we can now use some grow lights to help the plants grow. Now this is our little way of capturing carbon here in the city as well, showing people that you can be green and still operate a business. Now we're going to do some B-roll and then get back in the car and go for another drive. Now off to our second destination. The battery says we're at 82% and Waze says we're 68 kilometers from here. So it's going to be an interesting drive. It's going to be a highway drive, which means we're going to drop it from eco into sport mode. So we've plugged into 3 different USB ports already, and 2 of them charge and none of them will connect to the infotainment. So hopefully it's a upgrade for the infotainment later on so that it can connect to the iPhone 13, which is what I'm running. Now on the highway in the sport mode, the car feels really good. It actually has a lot of pull and I'm quite surprised. We are almost at Horseshoe Hill. We're actually outside the fence already. Excited to see this miniature pony, but first we'll do a in-depth review on the W5.
Are you a biter?
So welcome to Horseshoe Hill here in Malvar, Lipa. Now this place is not open to the public, but if you do make an appointment, you can come by and check in your horses. Doc Dan also cures dogs and he's a vet for other animals as well. Now back to the review. Here is the front of the W5. The W5 is an interesting look. I'm not quite sure what to compare it with because I also don't like how EVs look in terms of no venting in the front. Now the car still has an intake for air because we do have a radiator in front, I think, which is supposedly cooling the batteries in the ECU module. Over here in the front is the fast charging port. You're just gonna pop it down here and voila, this charging port over here will give you basically a full charge within 35 minutes, or is it 80% charge within 35 minutes? But the sad part is we don't have this charging port yet in the Philippines. Closing that. Now when you approach the car and unlock the car, this battery bar here is also the logo of the car. You can basically see the power of the car as you're walking towards the car. Now the car has a very smooth finish over here, as you can see that it doesn't have any intakes unlike regular in-car engine cars. The car does have 12 sensors everywhere wrapped around the car. There is a front-facing camera and I think mirror cameras also on the sides. Over here we have the daytime running LED lamps along with the LED strip here and then the HID headlights. So moving to the side profile of the car. The car is running 18-inch wheels. It's running a 225 55 18 and it is using a sliding brake caliper. Now the brakes of the car are actually very good. I haven't had any issues where I feel that the car is too heavy or overpowering the brakes. Also, we are running the regenerative braking, which means it's helping slow the car down as well. Now on the side of the car, as you can see here, we do have the side mirror along with the turn indicator signal and another camera over here. Now when you're approaching the car and the car is locked with the key, it's like proximity sensor where the door handle is just going to pop up like this and stay open. Now I find the angle of the handle a little weird in a sense where when it's closed like this, you'd actually have to push it out with one hand to open it. So when it's like this, you can actually just push it there and then use your hand to grab it. Now the button over here helps unlock and lock the car, especially if you don't want to pull the keys out and fumble with it. Now I do like the red color. I think the red color that they chose was a nice metallic gloss to it, not a flat plain gloss paint. Now the roof racks, I'm not sure are functional because there's no hole in the underneath, but maybe you could clamp something down to it. Feels pretty sturdy enough. Moving over to the rear quarter. Now the rear quarter section doesn't really stand out in any senses. the swooping roof line actually comes down pretty drastically, and you have this little spoiler in the back. You also have a shark's fin antenna on top, and then a big panoramic sunroof. It's not that big though compared to the other car that we reviewed recently, but it's pretty big enough. Now over here on the rear end of the W5, if you are carrying a lot of stuff and you have your hands full, you can actually just swing your leg underneath. The car has to be locked. Let me grab the key real quick. So we're gonna lock the car. And as you're approaching the car, keep the key in my pocket. As you're approaching the car, it'll unlock and sense you. And then we can do this. Where is the sensor? Now, normally the sensor does work. I have used it a few times, but for today, it doesn't seem to wanna work. The tailgate is a powered tailgate. We're just gonna use the key to open the tailgate. Come on. There you go. The boot space is fairly big, although it does not come with a full-size spare tire. You do have the bottle to inflate your tire and fill it up in case of an emergency, but we do not have a full-size spare tire underneath. Over here in the rear cabin of the car, as you can see, we do have quite a number of stuff in it, and it's fairly big. I won't say it's the biggest in the industry, but in case you needed more luggage space, the seats do fold down. Weirdly enough, they can't fold down from here. You have to go around to the middle section of the car to pull a strap underneath the seat so that it can fold down again. Over here in the back, we also do have a 12-volt charging port, and we have a little light, but beyond that, underneath the carpet, I'm not going to pull it out right now, we do have the slow AC charger system. The slow AC charger system will charge the car from 0 to 100 in about 16 hours. So it's a bit of a wait using the slow charger. Now, when you buy one of these cars, they will actually install a power charger into your home, which means you can charge the car from 0 to 100 in about 8 hours. So that's a bit faster than the slow AC charger. The slow AC charger is just for emergencies if you get stuck in a place with no EV charging station. Let's go over to the left side of the car. In the front of the car, we had the fast charging port, but over here in the rear of the car, we have the slower charging port. We're just gonna pop it like so, flip the cap over, and you have the, I guess, 7-pin port here. Now again, the 7-pin port takes on 2 chargers, which is the slower AC charger for emergencies, which will give you the 16-hour charge, and then the faster charger, which will give you 8 hours of charge. Now I'm gonna get into the rear seat. Now I was sitting in front of the car. I am 5'11", and we're going to check the leg room. So as you can see, at 5'11", it actually has very decent leg room. Now, in the other review, this was actually a USB port, but for this car, I think we got the bare bones model, so we don't have any USB ports here. The seats are not the comfiest, but they do give nice head support. The head space is actually very nice. I don't feel claustrophobic back here. We do have a little courtesy light, which is LED, and a little grab handle over here. So in terms of other ports, there's one USB port down here, and then there's an aircon vent for your passengers as well. Now, the build quality for the leather and the exterior, I mean, they tried to make it look like almost a Mercedes-Benz with this plating here and this pattern here, but overall I would say the design is just fairly okay. This is a lot of plastic here, softer plastic leather feeling here, and then the window switch over here. Not much amenities else in the rear seat. Let's go to the front of the car. Moving to the driver's seat of the car, this is where all the action is happening now. Again, the power switch is over here. We're just gonna press it once and power the car up. Over here on the left side, we have the trunk button to open and close the trunk. We have a little lock port over here so you can lock the charger cable from being pulled out in case you're in a public area. And when the car gets a little too annoying in traffic with all the sensors, you can turn off the sensors over here by pressing the button over here. And moving over to the left stalk is actually for the headlight. You have high beams over here, and then we set it to auto at the moment. We do have our signal markers here as well. Over here, we do have a facial camera, although I'm not quite sure why you would want that in terms of having it in a car. I guess if you had different drivers, it could sense who you are and change the profile depending on the drivers. As you can see here in the steering wheel on the left column, there looks like to be a cruise control setting. Now, we haven't used that. The horn of the car does sound decent. And then over here on the right of the car, you have the volume knob and jog buttons for the radio. Now moving over to the controversial radio. This is a 15.6-inch touchscreen monitor, but sadly, no navigation, no Apple CarPlay, no Android Auto, and the volume and position of the volume knob is actually quite weird. We had to call Bob from W Motors, and basically he told us it was underneath here.
Some part of the screen.
Ah, okay.
There's a button.
Now in the other, I guess, more advanced models, there's a third button over here that you can push, and this whole monitor will actually go sideways. Over here you have some buttons down here which have no tactile feedback, so you don't know if you're pushing them hard enough or soft enough. You basically have the door lock and unlock feature, the home screen button over here, the mic for voice control, and then over here you can also turn off the touchscreen monitor. The touchscreen monitor, I think, is a wasted space of real estate because it doesn't show any other features. Now, when we got into the car, we actually had to play with the equalizer of the car just to get a better sound from the sound system. Off the bat, it sounded very empty, but after fiddling around with the equalizer, we did get a better sound system. Now, as I was mentioning, the iPhone 13 with the USB cable was not working with the car, although connected the iPhone through Bluetooth, and that sounded pretty okay. The car also has a built-in camera over here, which means you can record your trip. When you have this button over here that goes into the vehicle mode, you can turn on the driver assist modes, which is lane change, lane departure, which will actually turn off because I find it quite annoying. Now it does have the auto hold feature for the hills, but it only works when the driver door is closed. The steering mode has sport and standard. I wouldn't know why you'd want sport steering wheel with this vehicle. And then there is an ESP control, which means you can turn off the traction, which also I don't know why you'd want to do that in an EV, especially because this is a front wheel drive electric vehicle. Maybe if it was a rear wheel drive, it would be more fun to play with. Here in the middle section up on the top, you have a little cubby hole again for your glasses, not bad. So over here in the middle section, you can actually open the panoramic roof, touch it once, maybe touch it. So weird. So there's an auto feature, but it only works when it's halfway open. So I'm going to try to close it again. Okay, closing it, you can use the auto feature to close it. And then for the sunshade, one touch, you can close the sunshade again. Very peculiar car. I wish there was a upgrade to the infotainment system so that we can get Apple CarPlay, at least ways to connect to it so that it can use all this massive real estate. You can check the tire pressure of the car, which is over here. The one touch quick check shows you the tire pressure, and maybe if there were other faults with the car, it might show you other faults as well. So as I was saying, this is how to turn the car on. If you want to put the car in sport mode, you just push this down and you can get sport. And then if you want the regen mode on, you can just turn the wheel once and it'll go to number 1, and then if you turn it again, it'll go to number 2. So we can actually turn it off and turn it on. Now let's talk about some key facts about this car. The car was established in 2016, went into mass production in 2018, and was one of the best-selling EV units in China in 2019. Now the price of the car, according to WM Motor Philippines, they're going to be announcing the price, but it is under the 3 million bracket mark. Now also, along with the car, I asked about the warranty period. The warranty period is 5 years or 150,000 kilometers for the car itself. And then for the high volt battery, it is 8 years or 160,000 kilometers. Now it got me wondering, how much would it cost to replace the battery system of the car? And WM Motors Philippines couldn't give me a direct answer. Instead, they just read back the warranty period of the car. Granted, if you do have to claim for the battery and the warranty of the battery pack, the battery will go back to WM Motors in China because sadly, we do not have a lithium recycling plant here locally yet. Now, charging. Everyone who drives an EV has range anxiety, and knowing where the charging stations are close to you will always make you feel better. Now, SM Supermalls was one of the first malls to have an EV charging station, but sadly, not all EV charging plugs are the same. There are about 3 charging plugs that they informed me about, which I actually had to read up on. There is the GB/T, CCS2, and CHAD Demo. Now, the car takes on the GB/T, and SM Supermalls offers the CCS2, which means you cannot charge this yet in the malls of SM. Hopefully, within the year, WM Motors can develop the GB/T charging stations for this car. Now, according to WM Motors also, to charge the battery in this car, which is a 52 kilowatt-hour battery, will take about 520 pesos from 0 to full. Now, if you compare that to, I guess, kilometers per liter in a normal car, this definitely is a winner in terms of mileage to peso ratio. So those are the facts about the car. If you guys want to know more information, please follow WM Motors on Instagram. You can send them a message and ask more facts about this car. But for now, thank you so much to Doc Dan and Horseshoe Hill. We actually got a banana tree which is sitting in the back seat of the car, which we're gonna bring back to the farm. For now, we're gonna take the car back into the city, do one more errand, and then give you my final thoughts on driving this electric vehicle. So let's get out of here. Something is burning and it's going into the gas station. Oh, a truck is burning and it's going into a gas station. It's so eerily quiet. The sound of the future sounds like a vacuum cleaner. Okay, I'm back in my parking slot and we have 144 kilometers left. Let's compute the range and then talk about the pros and cons of the EV. I'm finally back in the condominium and I did some rough computations. The EV said we traveled about 199 kilometers, when in actual we only traveled about 150 kilometers. Granted, I was a bit heavy on the throttle in the highway, enjoying the electric torque and pulse. Now I'm gonna go over some of the pros and cons I like about the EV. One of the pros that I think it has no noise. Now the no noise is also good when you're traveling through quiet neighborhoods or you're leaving early in the morning or late in the evening. So at least this way you're literally zipping through traffic and no one can hear you coming, which might be a good and bad thing. Obviously, if you use the car in the city, there are no tailpipe emissions, which means less smog for the city as well. I think the 5-year warranty program is actually a benefit of the car, also the 150 kilometer range as well. WM Motors Philippines along with WM Motors in China commits to a sustainable future, which means they will also take back defective batteries in terms of breaking them down and recycling them and actually disposing of them properly. In terms of enjoyment factor, the car does have some zip to it. The brakes are adequate enough, and then the suspension is actually nice and soft. After doing about 150 kilometers in the car, I feel comfortable, I feel okay, I don't feel tired, and it actually was a very pleasant experience. Lastly, on the pros list is WM Motors Philippines is actually trying to source out an adapter so that they can use the CCS2 charging from SM Supermalls so that they can link it up with the GBT chargers. Now let's go over some cons of the car. I don't like that the engine has no noise. Engines. Because now I can hear everyone else's noise beside me. I thought range anxiety will be a thing, although I got home with about 36% left. I don't think it was such a huge thing for me, especially knowing that if I had this car in my garage that I would have a charging port next beside it. Range anxiety was one of the cons that I wrote down, but knowing that we just used the car for 150 kilometers and we were zipping through traffic, I don't think it's such a big issue. The battery seems to be holding up. I just know over time if the battery will degrade over the years and will it still read an accurate reading on your cluster. Also, I think if you keep the car in eco mode, then definitely you can conserve more power. Now, if I did have this car in my garage, for sure I would have a charging station, and hopefully over the next few months, WM Motors along with other manufacturers can put more charging stations around the metro, especially because the whole EV program is now launching in the city. One more pro I did forget about the EV market is that the car is exempted from color coding because it is an EV vehicle. And yes, some of the last things on the list is definitely in my condominium there are no charging ports, there's no outlet near me, so which means I cannot charge this car here in the condo. And last on the list was the charging adapter ports. Knowing that there's the GBT, the CCS2, and the CHAD Demo, I was a bit confused on this in the beginning, but I now understand that some is for Asia, one is for Europe, and the other one I think is for Tesla. Now granted that the EVs are seen as proprietary, it doesn't make sense that they've changed ports. It's almost like the Apple Lightning along with the USB-C. Hopefully one day they can just centralize everything into one charging port, and then this wouldn't be a problem anymore. And I think I'm going to end the vlog here. I hope you guys enjoyed this thorough review on the Weltmeister W5 electric vehicle. Now if you guys have any more questions, you can follow the WM Motors Philippines on Instagram and ask them all your questions. The car will be launching this July, and good luck to them. Thank you so much to WM Motors Philippines for lending me this car, and thank you to you guys for watching and supporting the channel. Anyway, I will see you guys again in the next video.